friend sees you across the room और एक wink देता है. Just one quick wink. अब सोचो, was that just an involuntary physical twitch? या फिर was it some secret message?
Right.
कोई private joke? Maybe. Maybe they were even flirting. एक इतना simple सा action, but it can have so many meanings, है ना?
Exactly.
Welcome to the world of symbols. और आज हम इसकी गहराइयों में उतरेंगे. Oh, and हाँ, before we decode these mysteries, जल्दी से hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell और comment करके बताओ what's your favorite symbol and why.
हाँ, जरूर बताना.
चलो, let's get started.
Absolutely. Welcome everyone. आज के इस mega lecture में we are going to understand the ideas of two anthropology superstars, Clifford Geertz and Victor Turner.
The big two.
The big two.
हम एक-एक करके इन सारे important questions को tackle करेंगे. First, what is Geertz's thick description? Okay.
Second, Victor Turner and his concept of liminality.
फिर
A critical examination of both their contributions.
Uh-huh.
फिर Geertz के हिसाब से Balinese cockfight, वहाँ की culture के बारे में क्या बताती है? How is Geertz's interpretive anthropology different from Turner's symbolic anthropology?
Okay, the big comparison.
Yes.
What are their contributions to symbolic and interpretive theories?
What has been the overall contribution of anthropologists in interpreting symbols? And finally, a quick look at symbolism and symbolic anthropology.
Wow, that's a lot to cover.
It is. So seatbelts बांध लो दोस्त, क्योंकि this is going to be a fascinating journey.
Okay, let's dive straight into our first question. This is from 2021. Elucidate the concept of thick description of Clifford Geertz with a suitable example.
Right.
Symbolic analysis of human action.
Great place to start. So our first big idea, Clifford Geertz and the concept of thick description.
Okay.
तो in simple words, thick description है क्या? इसका मतलब है not just observing an action, but understanding the hidden cultural meanings and the context behind it.
So going beyond the surface.
Exactly. Geertz कहते हैं an anthropologist's job isn't just to note down facts, but to interpret those meanings. समझे? It's like being a cultural detective.
I love that, a cultural detective.
हाँ.
A real life example. I think I have one. जैसे कोई cricket match देख रहा हो.
Okay, tell me.
A thin description would be, a person hit a ball with a wooden bat. That's it.
Just the physical action.
Right, but a thick description would explain that this was the final over of an India-Pakistan match. The last ball, a six was hit, and that six won India the World Cup.
Oh, that changes everything.
देखा context का कमाल. The emotion, the history, the rivalry, वो सब है thick stuff.
That is a perfect analogy. So, let's break this down for a model answer. First, the introduction. You should always start by mentioning that Geertz ने ये concept अपनी landmark book, The Interpretation of Cultures, 1973 में introduce किया था.
Right, the sauce.
Yes. The main goal of this concept is to understand the meaning behind human actions, not just describe them on the surface.
Okay.
Second, the body. यहाँ पर you should discuss its four core features. Number one, interpretative nature.
Meaning.
Meaning. It goes beyond surface level observation. You're not just seeing, you're interpreting.
Okay.
Number two, emphasis on symbolic meaning. This method views culture as a system of symbols. Every action, object, or word can be a symbol.
Got it.
Third, and this is super important, native's point of view.
The emic perspective, right?
Precisely. It means understanding how the participants themselves interpret their world from their perspective. And fourth, contextual connectivity. This connects individual actions to broader social structures and cultural norms.
Makes sense.
Then, you must explain the difference between thin versus thick description. A thin description is just a physical act.
Example.
An eyelid contracts.
The twitch.
Yes. A thick description understands the cultural code and intent behind it. Example. That same eyelid contraction could be a conspiratorial wink, a joke, a flirtatious signal, or even a parody of a wink. It all depends on the context. Cool na?
Very cool. It shows how complex we are.
And the classic example you must use is the Balinese cockfight. The thin observation is, people in Bali are betting on roosters fighting. Simple?
Okay, sounds brutal.
It is on the surface, but Geertz's thick interpretation showed that this wasn't just a game. It was a text about masculinity, social status, and village rivalry. The betting wasn't really for economic gain.
It was for something else.
It was a public performance of loyalty and a way to navigate power dynamics without real violence.
Wow.
Finally, the conclusion. You should conclude by stating that Geertz's approach makes anthropology an interpretive science in search of meaning rather than an experimental one in search of universal laws. And you must use his famous quote to end your answer. Man is an animal suspended in webs of significance he himself has spun.
Why is it so important to write the name of Geertz's book in the introduction?
It's crucial because it gives your answer credibility and context. It shows you know the origin of the idea, which signals deep knowledge to the examiner.
Right, it shows you've done your homework. Second, content. What is the real meaning of native's point of view? Does it just mean listening to what people say?
Good question. It's not just what they say, but understanding their entire worldview. It means trying to see the world through their eyes, with their values and their beliefs, instead of judging them from your own cultural lens.
So, empathy is key. Okay, structure again. Is presenting the thin versus thick description comparison in a table format a good idea?
Absolutely. Our table is a brilliant tool here. It makes the comparison sharp, clear, and easy for anyone to understand in a single glance. It definitely helps in scoring better.
Great tip. Now for content. Why is the Balinese cockfight example so famous and effective?
Because it perfectly demonstrates how a seemingly simple or even brutal activity can have incredibly deep and complex cultural layers. It's the ultimate case study for proving the power of thick description.
Okay, and for structure, how does ending the conclusion with Geertz's quote make the answer more impactful?
It provides a powerful closing statement directly from the source. It shows that you have a deep understanding of his philosophy and leaves a lasting, authoritative impression. It's like a mic drop moment.
Okay, last one, content. Can we apply thick description in modern life, say to social media?
100%. A thin description of a social media post is a person posted a photo. A thick description would analyze the curated pose, the filter used, the carefully written caption, the strategic hashtags, the responses it gets. It's a whole web of significance that tells a story about identity, status, and social connections.
Fantastic. Now pause and practice saying this. Thick description isn't just about what people do. It's about the webs of significance they spin around what they do. Go on, rehearse.
Great.
Mini recap. In short, thick description is the key to unlocking the symbolic meaning behind human actions by understanding their cultural context.
Perfect summary.
Chalo, Geertz se aage बढ़ते हैं and let's meet our second thinker, Victor Turner. The next question is from 2020, a short note for 10 marks. Victor Turner and liminality.
Right.
The broad micro-theme is processual analysis of ritual transitions and symbolic social transformations.
All right. Let's get into this super cool concept,
Yeah.
Victor Turner's concept of liminality.
Okay, what is it?
In simple words, liminality is the in-between stage of a ritual. It's a phase of transition. Imagine a caterpillar inside its chrysalis. It's no longer a caterpillar, but it's not yet a butterfly. That in-between state,
Yes,
that's liminality.
that's it.
Turner famously called it the betwixt and between state.
Betwixt and between. I love that phrase.
A real-life example could be the last day of college.
Tell me more.
You're not a student anymore, but you're not officially a graduate either. That time between your farewell party and the convocation ceremony, that's liminality. Everyone feels equal. There's no hierarchy, no seniors or juniors. It's a unique shared experience.
That's cool, na?
That's a perfect modern example. It captures the essence of it. Okay? For a model answer, structure is key.
Right.
For the introduction, you must start by stating that Turner borrowed this concept from Arnold von Genev's work on rites of passage. This concept became the cornerstone of Turner's entire theory.
Okay, so he built on earlier work.
Yes, for the body, you need to explain a few key terms. First, the betwixt and between state. This is an ambiguous phase where participants are stripped of their old social positions but haven't yet been given their new ones.
In limbo.
Exactly. Second, communitas. This is a key term. In the liminal phase, people experience communitas, a feeling of intense community and solidarity. Social hierarchies like class and status are temporarily suspended. Sab barabar.
Everyone is equal.
I felt that in college. Exactly. Third, anti-structure. Turner called this temporary suspension of rules anti-structure. This is a magical space where new social bonds can form and cultural transformation can happen. Fourth, you must mention the tripartite process, which Turner adopted from Van Gennep. It has 3 stages.
Which are?
Separation. Individuals are detached from their old status. Liminality, the transitional betwixt and between threshold. And reincorporation. Individuals are brought back into society with a new identity.
Separation, liminality, reincorporation. Got it.
For the ethnographic case study, you must use Turner's work on the Ndembu tribe of Zambia. During their initiation rituals, young boys were separated from their families and placed in a liminal space, where they were all equals. They were then reincorporated back into the tribe as men.
A real-world example.
Yes. For the conclusion, you should end by highlighting the significance of Turner's work, that the liminal phase is an essential, creative, and transformative period for moving from one social identity to another.
That's very clear. Let's jump into the cross questions. First, a structural one. For a short note, should you use a flowchart?
Yes, absolutely. A simple flowchart like separation, liminality, reincorporation is visually appealing and shows clarity of thought. It's a quick way to make a big impact in a short answer.
On content, what's an easy way to explain the difference between communitas and community?
Good question. A community is structured, with established rules and hierarchies. Communitas is unstructured, spontaneous, and free of hierarchy, and it's usually a temporary feeling experienced during a ritual.
Okay, structure versus spontaneity. Got it. For structure again, how important is it to give the Ndembu tribe example in this answer?
It's absolutely critical. Without it, your answer is just abstract theory. The ethnographic example provides concrete proof and shows you understand how the theory applies in the real world.
So theory plus proof. Now for content, is liminality always a positive, happy experience?
Not necessarily. It can also be a very stressful and uncertain phase. Think about it. You've lost your old identity, but you haven't received your new one yet. This can be a very disorienting and anxious time for people.
True, uncertainty is scary. A question on structure. For a 10-mark question, what is the ideal length of the answer?
Around 150 words is a good target. The key is to explain each point concisely. Be brief, but make sure you cover all the key concepts. No fluff.
Be brief, be brilliant. Okay, final question on content. Can we see liminality in modern office culture?
Definitely. An employee serving their notice period is in a perfect liminal phase. They are no longer fully a part of the company, but they haven't completely left either. They are truly betwixt in between.
That's a great example. Okay, let's practice this. Liminality is the betwixt and between stage of a ritual where communitas suspends social structure. Practice karo.
Perfect.
Mini recap. So in short, liminality is that magical middle phase of rituals where real transformation happens.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, up tak we've understood Geertz and Turner separately. Now let's bring them together for a proper face-off. This question is from 2019 for 20 marks. Critically examine the contribution of Victor Turner and Clifford Geertz in anthropology.
The big one.
The broad micro-theme is
Evaluation of symbolic and integrative anthropology in deciphering cultural meaning through the works of Turner and Geertz.
Great. So Turner versus Geertz, a critical comparison. The focus of this question is to assess how these two thinkers changed anthropology. The key point is this. दोनों ने culture को symbols का system माना, लेकिन
उनके देखने का नजरिया अलग था.
Exactly. Turner focused on the process of rituals, while Geertz focused on the meaning within culture.
I think I have an analogy for this. Imagine you're watching a movie.
Okay.
Victor Turner is like the director, focused on how the story moves forward, how characters transform from one stage to another. That's the process.
I like that. And Clifford Geertz,
And Clifford Geertz is like the film critic, who decodes the movie's hidden messages,
its themes.
and its symbols. That's the meaning. Samjhe? That's a brilliant analogy. It perfectly captures the difference. Okay, for a 20-mark model answer, the structure needs to be solid.
Let's hear it.
For the introduction, you should state that Turner and Geertz led a major paradigm shift in mid-20th century anthropology, moving the focus away from rigid functionalist models and towards symbols and meanings.
Setting the stage.
Yes, in the body, you must create distinct sections. First, Victor Turner, symbolic anthropology and social process. Talk about his key concepts, liminality and communitas. Emphasize his focus on processual analysis, how rituals work to resolve social conflicts. For substantiation, you must use the Endembo tribe example.
With a moody tree symbol?
Yes, and don't forget to mention his book, The Ritual Process, 1969.
Got it.
Second section, Clifford Geertz, Interpretive Anthropology and Thick Description. Key concept, thick description. Focus, culture as a text, which the anthropologist has to read or interpret. Substantiation, the Balinese cockfight. And of course, mention his book, The Interpretation of Cultures, 1973.
Okay, both sides covered.
The most important part is the next section, critical evaluation and comparison. First, highlight the similarities. Both of them prioritized intensive fieldwork and the emic or natives perspective.
What they had in common?
Then, lay out the differences. Turner was processual, Geertz was interpretive. One focused on the function of ritual, the other on the meaning of culture. Finally, you must add the critique. Turner is often criticized for ignoring power hierarchies in his analysis of communitas. Geertz's work is criticized for being too subjective and difficult to generalize.
The critically examine part.
Precisely. And please, a comparative table here is a must-have.
That's a great tip.
For the conclusion, you should summarize that Turner gave us the tools to understand the transformative power of rituals, while Geertz gave us the framework to interpret the meaning-making process of human life. Together, they made anthropology a more nuanced and humanistic science.
Fantastic. Okay, time for cross questions. Structure first. In a 20-mark answer, how effective is making a table?
Extremely effective. It makes your comparison clear, concise, and easy to read. It shows strong analytical skills and will definitely impress the examiner. It's a game changer.
Content. We mentioned the term emic perspective again. What exactly does that mean?
Emic means the insider's view. It's about understanding a culture from the perspective of its own members, using their own categories and meanings, as opposed to the etic perspective, which is the outsider's analytical view.
Inside versus outside. Got it. Structure. Why is it important to mention the names of their books?
It shows the depth of your study. It proves that you've gone beyond surface-level notes and have engaged with their original works. It authenticates your arguments.
Content. Why is Geertz's work often called subjective?
Because his interpretation depends heavily on the researcher's own understanding and insights. Another anthropologist could look at the same Balinese cockfight and come up with a different interpretation. This makes it difficult to verify scientifically.
So it's not like a math problem with one right answer.
Insider's view. It's about understanding a culture from the perspective of its own members, using their own categories and meanings, as opposed to the etic perspective, which is the outsider's analytical view.
Inside versus outside. Got it. Structure. Why is it important to mention the names of their books?
It shows the depth of your study. It proves that you've gone beyond surface-level notes and have engaged with their original works. It authenticates your arguments.
Content. Why is Geertz's work often called subjective?
Because his interpretation depends heavily on the researcher's own understanding and insights. Another anthropologist could look at the same Balinese cockfight and come up with a different interpretation. This makes it difficult to verify scientifically.
So it's not like a math problem with one right answer.
Exactly.
Structure. For a critically examined question, should we only write positives or negatives too?
The word critically is a direct instruction to discuss both strengths and weaknesses. You must provide a balanced view, highlighting their immense contributions as well as the limitations of their theories.
Good to know. Final content question. Is their work still relevant today in our globalized world?
Absolutely. Think about modern rituals in corporate culture or the symbols used in online communities and political movements. Their frameworks are incredibly useful for understanding these contemporary phenomena.
Got it. Let's practice this one. Turner focused on the process of rituals, while Geertz focused on the interpretation of cultural texts. Now it's your turn.
Nicely put.
Mini recap. In short, Turner saw culture as a process, Geertz saw it as a text. Together, they changed the face of anthropology forever.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, next up, let's do a deep dive into Geertz's most famous example. The question is from 2016 for 15 marks. According to Geertz, how does the cockfight reveal aspects of Balinese culture?
Right.
The broad micro-theme is interpretive analysis of cultural texts and the symbolic representation of social structures through the Balinese cockfight.
Yes, this question requires us to apply the concept of thick description to a specific case.
So practical application.
Exactly. For the introduction, you should start by mentioning Geertz's seminal essay, Deep Play, Notes on the Balinese Cockfight, from his 1973 book. State his core argument that the cockfight is not just a sport, but a cultural text that symbolically expresses key aspects of Balinese life like status, masculinity, and social identity.
Okay.
In the body of your answer, you should use clear subheadings to discuss the different aspects it reveals. First, status and hierarchy.
So it's about social standing.
At its heart, yes, the cockfight is a status competition. The betting is less about money and more about social prestige. You should explain the betting structure. There are high-stakes center bets made by prominent individuals which mirror their social alliances, and smaller side bets made by the audience, reflecting the broader social hierarchy.
So the betting itself is a social map.
Precisely. Second, masculinity and gender identity. The roosters, called sabung, are seen as symbolic extensions of the male ego. They represent virility, honor, aggression, and courage. A man's reputation in the village is directly tied to his cock's performance in the ring.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. Third, community, solidarity, and ritual role. The event isn't just about conflict. It also reinforces kinship alliances and local solidarity. It's a way to symbolically play out internal village tensions without resorting to actual violence. Plus, these fights are often linked to temple festivals, serving as ritual blood sacrifices.
So it brings people together too.
Yes. Fourth, and this is the most crucial point, the concept of deep play. Geertz borrowed this term from the philosopher Jeremy Bentham. It describes a situation where the stakes are so high that it seems irrational from a purely economic standpoint.
Like betting more than you can afford to lose.
Exactly. Here, the symbolic stakes, honor, prestige, and esteem, far outweigh the material risk of losing money. It's a space for expressing intense emotions in a culture that is otherwise known for being very emotionally restrained.
So it's an emotional outlet.
Yes. Finally, you must add a small section on critical examination. Critics like Talal Asad have argued that Geertz gets so lost in symbolic meaning that he ignores the material and political realities, like who has the economic power to own the best roosters.
So he missed the economic angle.
And the analysis is very male-centric and marginalizes the female perspective on Balinese society. In the conclusion, you should reiterate that for Geertz, the cockfight is a microcosm of Balinese society, a story the Balinese tell themselves about themselves.
Fantastic breakdown. Let's get into the cross questions. Structure. How can a student make their answer on the cockfight stand out from just a generic summary?
By using Geertz's specific terminology, like text, deep play, and webs of significance, and by structuring the answer around the specific cultural aspects like status, masculinity, and community. This shows analytical depth, not just memory.
So use the lingo. Content. Does deep play mean that the betting is irrational?
It's not irrational, but it's non-rational from a purely economic viewpoint. The logic isn't to maximize profit, the logic is to maximize social status and affirm social ties. The rationality is cultural, not economic.
Okay, different kind of logic. Structure. Would a flowchart be useful in this answer?
Yes, a very simple one could be effective. Something like social conflict, symbolic action, cockfight, resolution cohesion would visually represent the social function of the cockfight.
A visual summary. I like it. Content. What was the main critique from Talal Asad that you mentioned?
Assad's main point was that Geertz's analysis is too poetic and not political enough. He argues that by focusing only on symbols and meaning, Geertz overlooks the real power structures and economic inequalities that determine who can participate and win in these status games.
So, who holds the power?
Yes, that question. Structure. For a 15-mark question, how many subheadings are ideal for the body?
4 to 5 well-explained subheadings are perfect. Status, masculinity, community, deep play, and a short critique section would create a very clear and comprehensive structure.
Perfect. Final content question. So is Geertz saying that the Balinese people are obsessed with cockfighting?
Not that they are obsessed, but that this activity, however minor it might seem to an outsider, is packed with immense cultural meaning. It's a form of cultural expression, a story the Balinese tell themselves about their own social world.
Great. Time to practice. The Balinese cockfight is not just a sport. It's a cultural text about status, masculinity, and deep play. Rehearse that.
Excellent.
Mini recap. In short, for Geertz, the cockfight is a symbolic microcosm of Balinese society itself.
Well said. Moving on to question number 5 from 2015. This is a 20-marker. What made Geertz's interpretive anthropology distinct from Turner's symbolic anthropology? What does each of them mean by the term symbol and symbolic?
Right.
The broad micro-theme is a comparative analysis of their frameworks with a focus on core definitions.
Right. This question is more specific than the previous comparison. It wants us to focus on their definitions of symbol and symbolic.
So it's about the fundamentals.
Precisely. In the introduction, you should state that both scholars led the symbolic turn in anthropology, but their approaches diverged based on how they fundamentally defined a symbol.
Okay.
Then you must structure the body very clearly. Section A. Geertz' Interpretive Anthropology. First, define symbol for Geertz. For him, symbols are like cultural texts that carry shared public meanings. They are like a dictionary for a society's worldview.
Okay, a dictionary.
Then, define symbolic. This refers to the interpretive dimension. An action, like winking, becomes symbolic when it carries a web of cultural meanings. His methodology is thick description. The case study is, of course, the Balinese cockfight, where the entire event is a symbolic text about status.
Right.
Section B. Victor Turner's Symbolic Anthropology. Now, define symbol for Turner. For him, symbols are multivocal and dynamic. This means they can have many different meanings at the same time. They're more like operators than texts.
Operators. What does that mean?
It means they do things. They don't just sit there to be read.
Okay.
Then define symbolic. This refers to the performative and transformative power of symbols to create social change during rituals. His methodology is the analysis of social dramas and liminality. Case study, the Ndembu's muddy tree, which simultaneously symbolizes fertility, maternal care, and social continuity, actively facilitating a girl's transition to womanhood.
So it's an active agent of change.
Exactly. The final and most important section is Section C, Key Distinctions. First, core focus. Geertz focused on interpretation and meaning. Turner focused on function and transformation. Second, nature of culture. Geertz saw culture as a relatively static text to be read. Turner saw it as a dynamic process of social action. A comparative table here is a must to get top marks.
Table again.
Always helpful. The conclusion should re-emphasize that their entire theoretical difference stems from their different definitions of a symbol. For Geertz, if a symbol is a text, you interpret it. For Turner, if a symbol is an operator, you analyze its function in a social process.
That's a very sharp analysis. Let's do some cross questions. Structure. How is this question different from the 2019 critically examined question we discussed earlier?
It's more focused. The 2019 question was a broad evaluation of their overall contributions. This 2015 question specifically asks for their definitions of symbol and symbolic, and wants you to explain how those definitions lead to the differences in their work. Your answer must be centered on those definitions.
So be very specific. Content. What does Turner mean when he says symbols are multivocal?
It means a single symbol can have multiple voices or meanings at the same time. The Ndembu milk tree, for example, can symbolize motherhood, matrilineal descent, tribal unity, and a specific goddess all at once. It's not a simple one-to-one meaning like in a dictionary.
So it's layered with meanings.
Got it.
Structure. In the comparative table, what would be the best parameters to use for comparison?
Excellent question. I would suggest using parameters like concept of symbol, primary method, analytical goal, and view of culture. This creates a very sharp, point-by-point comparison that is easy to follow.
Great parameters. Content. So, did Geertz and Turner have a public disagreement or rivalry?
Not really a public rivalry. They were contemporaries, shaping the same field, but their interests just took them down different paths. Geertz was more interested in the what of meaning, while Turner was more interested in the how of ritual process. They were exploring different aspects of the same symbolic universe.
Two sides of the same coin, in a way.
You could say that.
Structure. Should the conclusion for this answer be different from the previous comparison question's conclusion?
Yes, slightly. The conclusion here must explicitly tie back to the question. It should re-emphasize how their different definitions of symbol as a text versus as an operator are the fundamental reason for their distinct methodologies and analytical goals.
Very specific. Final content question to make it super clear. For Geertz, a national flag is a text about patriotism. For Turner, what would it be?
That's a great way to put it. For Turner, a flag wouldn't just be a text. It would be an operator in a ritual, like a national parade or an oath ceremony. He would ask, what does the flag do in this context? How does it create communitas among the citizens? How does it transform a diverse crowd into a unified nation? He's focused on its active, performative role.
That makes the difference so clear. Okay, practice cue time. For Geertz, symbols are texts to be read. For Turner, symbols are operators that do things. Practice.
Perfect.
Mini recap. Geertz's focus was meaning, text. Turner's was action, process. And this core difference started with how they defined a symbol itself.
Exactly.
All right, let's tackle the next question from 2013 for 15 marks. Bring out the contribution of Turner and Geertz in symbolic and interpretive theories in anthropology.
Okay. The broad micro theme is?
A paradigm shift towards symbolic analysis and meaning-making in anthropology.
Okay, this question is similar to the 2019 one, but it's for 15 marks, so the answer needs to be more concise and focused.
Shorter, but just as sharp.
Right. The introduction should state that symbolic and interpretive anthropology emerged in the mid-20th century as a response to earlier, more rigid functionalist paradigms. with Turner and Geertz as the key pioneers of this new direction.
Okay.
For the body, again, you should have two clear sections, but keep them brief. First, Victor Turner. Symbols as social processes. Mention his key contributions. The idea of the dynamic nature of symbols as storage units of meaning, his concepts of liminality and communitas, and his four-stage social drama framework. Breach, crisis, redressive actions, reintegration. Your case study here is the Ndembu milk tree, from his book, The Forest of Symbols.
The essentials of Turner.
Yes.
Second section, Clifford Geertz. Culture as an interpretive system. Key contributions, his idea of culture as a web of meanings, his groundbreaking method of thick description from the interpretation of cultures, and his central argument that anthropology should seek to understand meanings, not discover universal laws. Case study, the Balinese cockfight.
The essentials of Geertz.
You should also add a brief section on shared impact and limitations. Mention how both shifted the discipline's focus toward an emic, context-specific analysis. Briefly touch on the critiques, Turner for being too abstract, and Geertz for neglecting power dynamics.
A quick, balanced view.
Yes. The conclusion should summarize that despite their differences in critiques, they fundamentally changed anthropology by shifting its goal from explaining social functions to interpreting the webs of significance that constitute human life. That makes sense. Let's take the cross questions. Structure. How do you condense a 20-mark answer into a 15-mark answer without losing the key points?
You focus on keywords and concepts. Instead of explaining each concept in 2 or 3 sentences, you do it in 1. You might merge the comparison and critique sections into a single, brief paragraph. The key is to be precise and avoid unnecessary elaboration.
Be efficient with words. Content. You mentioned Turner's social drama framework. Can you explain that briefly again?
Of course, it's a 4-stage model he developed to analyze social conflict. Stage 1 is a breach of a social rule. Stage 2 is the crisis that follows. Stage 3 is redressive action, where rituals or legal actions are taken to resolve the crisis. And Stage 4 is either reintegration of the group or a permanent schism. It's a framework for understanding how society has handled trouble.
A 4-act play of social conflict. Point. Structure. Is it still necessary to mention their books in a 15-mark answer?
Yes, absolutely. It takes just a few words to write The Forest of Symbols or The Interpretation of Cultures, but it adds immense value and demonstrates the depth of your knowledge. Don't skip it.
Okay, small effort, big impact. Content. What exactly does Geertz mean when he says culture is a web of meanings?
It's a powerful metaphor. Imagine a spider's web. It's intricate, complex, and everything is connected. The spider, which is us humans, is suspended within this web. Geertz is saying that culture is this complex, interconnected system of symbols and meanings that we ourselves have created, and we live our entire lives within it.
That's a beautiful way to explain it. Structure. For this 15-mark question, is a table still a good idea for comparison?
To integrate the comparison points directly into the paragraphs to save words and maintain a smoother narrative flow.
So weave it in. Okay, final content question. Did Turner and Geertz only study tribes in Zambia and Bali?
Those are their most famous ethnographic works that formed the basis of their theories. However, their theoretical frameworks are so powerful that they have been applied by countless anthropologists to cultures all over the world, from corporate offices in Japan to online gaming communities.
So their ideas are globally applicable.
Very much so.
Great. Time to practice. Turner gave us tools to see culture in action. Geertz gave us tools to read culture for meaning. Rehearse that.
Very nice.
Mini recap. For a 15-mark question on their contributions, focus on their core concepts, key case studies, and the overall shift they brought to anthropology, but keep it concise and punchy.
Perfect.
Now for a really big one. From 2011 for 30 marks. Critically examine the contribution of anthropologists in the interpretation of symbols. This goes way beyond just Turner and Geertz.
Yes, this is a broad, high-value question that requires a comprehensive answer.
The broad micro theme is
The evolution of symbolic analysis in anthropology, covering multiple schools of thought.
exactly. The introduction must define what the interpretation of symbols means in anthropology. You could start with Geertz's webs of significance definition. You must state that the study of symbols has evolved through different theoretical schools.
So it's a history of the idea. Yes. The body needs a historical and thematic structure, showing this evolution of thought. You can structure it by different approaches. First, A. Semantic and structural interpretation, which is led by the French anthropologist Claude Levi-Strauss.
Okay, Levi-Strauss. What was his take?
His approach treats symbols as signs that are part of a larger structure, like a language. He wasn't interested in what symbols mean to individuals, but in the underlying universal patterns of human thought they reveal. His substantiation comes from his analysis of the myths of the Nomikwara people in Brazil.
So he was looking for the universal human mind.
Exactly. Second, B. Interpretive and contextual approach. This is where you bring in Clifford Geertz. Explain his method of thick description and the idea of culture as a local, public text. Use the Balinese cockfight as your prime example.
Okay, that's familiar territory.
Third, C. Symbols in ritual and social process. This is Victor Turner's domain. Discuss his concept of symbols as multivocal operators in social dramas. Talk about liminality and his study of the Ndembu milk tree. You can also include Benedict Anderson here, who analyzed how national symbols like flags and anthems work to construct imagined communities or nations.
Oh, interesting connection to nationalism.
Yes. Fourth, D. Symbols in social order and morality. Here, you must mention the British anthropologist Mary Douglas. She famously studied the symbolism of dirt and pollution. For her, what a society considers dirty is symbolic of what it considers socially out of place. Her analysis of purity rules among the Lile people of Central Africa showed how these classifications maintain social boundaries.
Dirt as a symbol of disorder. Fascinating.
Since it's a critically examined question, you need a big section on E. Critical examination, limitations and modern shifts. Here, you should discuss the common critiques. The subjectivity in interpretive anthropology, Geertz. The neglect of individual agency in structuralism, Levi-Strauss. And the general failure to adequately address power dynamics.
The weaknesses of each approach.
Yes. And you must also mention how modern anthropology now investigates globalized symbols, like how a hip-hop song from the US is reinterpreted in a totally new context in Japan.
Bringing it to the present day.
Correct. Your conclusion should summarize how the study of symbols in anthropology has evolved from a search for universal structures, Levi-Strauss, to an understanding of local context, Geertz, social process, Turner, and the politics of meaning in a globalized world.
That's a fantastic comprehensive roadmap. Cross questions for this monster question. Structure. For a 30-mark question, how many scholars should one aim to include?
At least 4 major ones are essential. Levi-Strauss, Geertz, Turner, and Mary Douglas. Adding a fifth, like Benedict Anderson or even David Schneider, shows wider reading and will definitely fetch higher marks.
So breadth is key? Content. Can you quickly explain Mary Douglas's idea about dirt again?
For her, dirt is simply matter out of place. A shoe isn't inherently dirty, but it becomes dirty when it's on the dinner table. She argued that what a society labels as dirty or polluting is symbolic and reveals its hidden system of classification and its moral and social boundaries. It's a symbolic way of maintaining order.
That's so smart. Structure. Would a comparative table be a good idea in this long answer too?
Yes, a table titled Comparative Symbolic Paradigms would be a brilliant addition here. You could have columns for scholar, key concept, focus of analysis, and example. This would be a fantastic way to summarize the different approaches you've discussed clearly.
Content. Who was Benedict Anderson and what does he mean by an imagined community?
Anderson was a political scientist whose work hugely influenced anthropology. He argued that a nation is an imagined community because you will never meet most of your fellow citizens, yet you feel a sense of communion with them. He argued this feeling is constructed through powerful symbols like a common language, the national flag, and national anthems.
So symbols create the feeling of being a nation.
Yes, structure. How should a student manage their time for a 30-mark question in an exam? You should allocate a significant amount of time, perhaps 30-35 minutes. It's crucial to spend the first 5 minutes just creating a structure on your rough sheet. List the scholars, their key concepts, and the critiques you will include. A good structure is half the battle won for a long-form answer.
Plan before you write.
Got it. Final content question. Are these older theories of symbolism still relevant in the age of the internet and memes?
More relevant than ever. Memes are a perfect example of modern symbols. They are multivocal, as Turner would say. They create imagined communities online. They're cultural texts that require thick description, as Geertz would say. And they have their own rules about what is cringe or based, which is a form of purity and pollution, as Douglas might argue. These classic theories give us the perfect tools to analyze them. The anthropological study of symbols evolved from universal structures, Levi-Strauss, to contextual meanings, Geertz, ritual processes, Turner, and social order, Douglas. Rehearse.
That's a great summary line.
Mini recap. A top-tier answer on the anthropological interpretation of symbols must cover multiple scholars and show the historical evolution of the field from universalism to context and power.
Exactly.
All right, 2 short notes coming up. First, from 2007, a short note on symbolism. Just that one word.
Simple but broad.
The broad micro-theme is the interpretation of symbols as vehicles of cultural meaning and catalysts for social transformation.
Okay, for a short note on a broad topic like symbolism, you need to be very direct and structured. Start with a definition. Symbolism is the study of how humans invest objects, actions, and words with arbitrary but shared meaning to make sense of the world and communicate with each other. You can mention David Schneider's point that the link between a symbol and its meaning is arbitrary or socially constructed.
Okay, a clear definition first.
The body should briefly cover the core analytical approaches. You can have 2 or 3 main points. A. The interpretive approach, Geertz. Mention his idea of webs of significance and how symbols act as cultural texts. Use the Balinese cockfight as a one-line example. B. The social process approach, Turner. Mention how symbols are dynamic operators that drive social action and transformation during rituals. Use the Ndembu milk tree as your example.
Okay.
You could even add a third point, C. The cognitive and classificatory aspect, Levi-Strauss, talking about how binary symbols like totems are good to think with, using the Australian Aborigine example. The conclusion should be a single, powerful sentence. The study of symbolism was crucial in transitioning anthropology from a science seeking laws to an interpretive science in search of meaning.
Nice and compact. Let's do some quick cross questions. Structure. For a short note, is it better to use paragraphs or bullet points?
A mix is best. A short introductory paragraph to define the term, and then bullet points or short, clearly titled subsections for the main body. It makes the answer scannable and very clear.
Content. What does Levi-Strauss mean when he says symbols are good to think with?
It means that humans use symbols, like the eagle hawk and crow totems among Australian Aborigines, to create binary oppositions. Example, us versus them, sky versus earth. These oppositions act as intellectual tools to classify their social world, who you can marry, who is your rival, and so on.
So tools for organizing society.
Yes. Structure. How important is it to include case studies in a short note? It's absolutely vital. Even in a short note, a single, well-chosen example, like Balinese cockfight or Nenbu milk tree, elevates your answer from a simple definition to a proper anthropological explanation.
Content. What did David Schneider mean when he said symbols are arbitrary?
He meant there's no natural or inherent connection between a symbol and what it represents. A red light means stop, not because the color red is naturally stopping, but because we have all culturally agreed that it will mean that. The meaning is socially constructed.
We give it the meaning. Exactly.
Structure.
Should I include a flowchart even if I'm short on time for a short note? If you can draw a very quick, simple one, yes. A flowchart like symbol, socio-cultural interpretation, meaning takes 10 seconds but adds a lot of visual value. If you're really pressed for time, focus on the text.
Content.
Can I just focus on Geertz and Turner for a note on symbolism?
You can, and it would be a decent answer. But adding a third perspective like Levi-Strauss or Schneider shows a broader understanding of the topic and will likely score better marks.
Practice time. Symbolism is the study of the webs of significance, Geertz, that act as operators in social life. Turner. Go on, practice.
That's a good one.
Mini recap. For a short note on symbolism, define it. Briefly explain the major approaches Geertz, Turner, Levi-Strauss with one example each and conclude on its importance.
Perfect.
Last question from 2001. A short note on symbolic anthropology.
Right.
The broad micro-theme is the shift from positivist laws to the interpretive analysis of culture as a system of symbols and shared meanings.
All right, this is very similar to the last question, but the focus here is on the subdiscipline or the school of thought itself.
The field itself.
Yes. The introduction should define symbolic anthropology as a school of thought that emerged in the 1960s. It was a non-positivist reaction to structuralism and functionalism. And it defined culture as an autonomous system of symbols and meanings. You must state its main goal using Geertz's famous words. It's an interpretive science in search of meaning, not an experimental one in search of law.
That quote again, it's so important.
It is. The body should again cover the core proponents. A. The interpretive approach, Clifford Geertz, with the cockfight example. B. The symbolic approach, Victor Turner, with the Nenbu tree example. But for this question, it is essential to add a third key figure. C. Symbolic nature of social institutions. And here, you talk about David Schneider.
Schneider again. What's his key contribution here?
Explain his argument that even fundamental institutions like kinship are not based on biological facts but are cultural constructions based on symbols. Use his classic case study. In the US, blood is the core symbol that defines who is kin. But in the society of Yap, kinship is defined by doing things for someone, like sharing food, not by biology. This is a brilliant example showing that even something as natural as family is symbolic.
That's mind-blowing.
It really is. Your conclusion can state that while symbolic anthropology has been criticized for being too subjective, it successfully and permanently turned the discipline's focus toward understanding the native's point of view.
Got it. Let's wrap up with the final set of cross-questions. Structure. How is a question on symbolic anthropology different from one on symbolism?
Symbolism is the concept itself, the use of symbols. Symbolic anthropology is the specific school of thought or subdiscipline that studies this concept. Your answer should reflect that difference. Talk about it as a reaction to other theories and mention its key proponents and goals as a specific field of study.
So concept versus field of study. Content. Can you explain the difference between the American order of nature and the Yap's order of doing again?
Of course, according to Schneider, for Americans, kinship is based on a shared natural substance, blood. This is the order of nature. You are kin because you are biologically related. For the people of Yap in Micronesia, you establish kinship through your actions. If you cultivate land and provide food for someone over time, you create a kin-like relationship. This is the order of doing. It powerfully shows that kinship isn't universally based on biology, it's a symbolic system.
That's such a clear example.
Structure. In a short note about a subdiscipline, is it important to mention its critiques?
Yes, a single line in the conclusion is perfect for showing a balanced view. Something like, while often criticized for its subjectivity, symbolic anthropology's legacy is undeniable, shows a critical and mature understanding.
Okay. Content. Was symbolic anthropology a popular school of thought? Yes, in the 1960s and 70s, it was a major intellectual movement in the US and UK. It represented a humanistic turn away from grand universal theories towards a more context-sensitive and meaning-centered approach to understanding culture. Its influence is still felt very strongly today.
So it was a revolution in a way.
You could call it that.
Structure. Should I definitely use Geertz's quote about interpretive science in this answer too?
Definitely. That quote is practically the official motto of symbolic anthropology. It's the perfect way to start your introduction or end your conclusion, as it beautifully summarizes the entire philosophy of the subdiscipline.
Final content question. So, does symbolic anthropology basically say there's no single objective truth about a culture?
In a way, yes. It argues that there isn't one objective scientific truth that an outsider can discover. Instead, there are multiple subjective truths or meanings created and shared by the people within a culture. The anthropologist's job is to understand and interpret those meanings from the native's point of view.
Okay, final practice cue for the day. Symbolic anthropology is an interpretive science in search of meaning, not an experimental one in search of law. Practice.
That's the one.
Mini recap. An answer on symbolic anthropology must define it as a specific school of thought, cover its main proponents, Geertz, Turner, and Schneider, and highlight its core focus on meaning and the native's perspective.
Well done.
Phew, what an incredible journey. तो आज हमने a deep dive into the world of symbolic and interpretive anthropology. हमने देखा कि कैसे एक simple सा wink भी meanings की एक पूरी दुनिया छुपाए हो सकता है.
That's right. To summarize our main takeaways today, first, Clifford Geertz gave us the lens of thick description, teaching us to read culture like a text and find meaning in events like the Balinese cockfight.
Right.
Second, Victor Turner showed us the dynamic power of rituals with concepts like liminality and communitas, explaining how societies transform as seen with the Ndembu tribe. And we also saw how other thinkers like Levi-Strauss, Mary Douglas, and David Schneider expanded the study of symbols to cover everything from myths and social order to the very definition of family.
And together, they completely shifted the focus of anthropology from function to meaning. They truly changed the game.
And here's a final thought for you to ponder. Remember, the goal of these theories is not to create universal laws. The goal is to understand those webs of significance that we humans spin around ourselves. Symbols are everywhere around you. Your clothes, your phone, the way you speak.
True.
You can now look at them with a new analytical eye. So here's a thought to leave everyone with. What is the most powerful symbol in your own life? And if you were an anthropologist, what would be the thick description of it?
What a question to think about. And इसी के साथ our lecture today comes to an end. अगर आपको ये deep discussion पसंद आया, तो please channel को subscribe करना मत भूलना. This video को like करो and अपने दोस्तों के साथ share करो.
Please do.
Comments में बताओ कि next topic क्या होना चाहिए. Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.